Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Have you ever wondered how does Warren Buffett sells billions of shares of Apple without any market impact? In this video, I'm going to talk about how he does that and what are the two ways that billionaires use to minimize market impact, especially when they're selling billions of shares of a company. Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Have you ever wondered when you and I go and sell an Apple share on the stock market, we go on a retail trading app and we just press sell and it's sold overnight. But have you ever wondered how does someone like Warren Buffett, who recently sold billions of shares of Apple, how does he do that? I mean, does he just go on a retail app to start with and press sell and within 3 business days, like we all have, get his big sale in place? Or is there any other ways that the billionaires do it? Today we're going to talk about how the billionaires sell their shares and how if you were to sell billions of shares of stocks, how does that work? And what do the billionaires do, which is different from what the retail investors do. To demonstrate this, we're going to use a company X sold by Mr. Y. Mr. Y has billions in shares in company X. Now he wants to sell that, and how he's going to do that versus how a retail investor like you and I would do. Alright, so as I say, this is company X and investor Y. The investor Y here is a billionaire. Now, if you and I were to sell this company shares here, right? This is the shares. We just press sell within 3 business days, we get the money in our bank. Now, in the case of billions of shares where a billionaire is trying to sell, this is not the same. There's a reason for that. Now, let's assume this here is company X share market. So we're just gonna say over time, that's going up, down, up, down. Now what happens here if today, this is the day Mr. Y wants to sell the shares, and that was, let's say, sitting at something like 50. This was around 100. This is 25. If Mr. Y was to sell billions of shares of company X. So what happens here? There would be a big supply. So supply goes up and demand might not necessarily go up. It might stay the same. So in that case, if supply goes up, the value of this share will start falling to 0. In the case where Mr. Y was to sell billions of shares of company X, you don't want something like this to happen. If we were to sell shares, the retail investors, when the retail investors sell shares, what happens? You probably have, let's say, 10 shares of X. If you were to sell 10 shares of X here, at most what happens, it goes down a little bit. Very minuscule that you won't hardly even notice. So you sell and then someone else in the market might buy your 10 shares. Which means this is sort of cancelled out. But in the case of Mr. Y here selling billions of shares, there certainly there's an increase in supply, but there might not be a demand for that billions of shares to be bought. So here we're talking about billions of shares. So if the supply has gone up by billions, there might not be billions of demand for that same shares of X. So in that case, how does someone like Warren Buffett sell billions of shares in Apple? Because we definitely don't want the market price of Apple to go to 0, and this hasn't happened when billions of shares were just sold by Warren Buffett. So how did he do that? In this video we're going to talk about this. So in the next phase of this video, this is what I'm going to talk about. How do billionaires sell billions of shares of company X? So we're going to analyze this in the next phase just to understand what happens when someone like Warren Buffett suddenly wants to sell billions of shares of Apple. So we'll assume that there is, let's say, $1 billion, we'll call it $1 billion worth of shares. Let's give this a number. Let's say each share is about $1. $1 per share. That's roughly 1 billion shares. So if someone like investor Y here was to sell $1 billion worth of shares of company X, what does someone like this do to minimize the impact on the market? There are things called as block trades. Now, what is a block trade? This is a block trade. Now, block trades are basically trades that happen when huge amount of shares are being sold back in the market to minimize the impact on the market. So what happens here in the case of 1 billion shares to be sold, in the case where 1 billion shares was to be sold on the market, we start using what we call block trades. Now, these block trades are mainly done by investment banks. So these are not done at our level where we just go on a retail exchange app where we press sell. So these are done at an investment bank. So someone like Warren Buffett would basically go to his investment bank. So to give you an example, it could be Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley. So these are the examples. So they would go to these investment banks and say, I want 1 billion shares to be sold of company X. These investment bankers, what they'll start doing is they will block these trades over time. So again, let's say this is today. So over time, what they're gonna do is they will start selling, let's say 100,000 shares here. Another day, they will sell another 100,000 shares and so forth. Over a long time of, let's say, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years, they're going to slowly sell these billions of shares gradually as opposed to one big chunk of 1 billion shares. So what that does is, if you remember the stock market again, if you sold 100,000 as opposed to 1 billion here, the impact is way less as opposed to going all the way down. And at the same time, these are not done at the market level. They usually are done after trading hours. Now, who does these investment bankers sell these block trades to? They go to people like your institutional buyers. Now, who are these institutional buyers? There are people like your pension funds, mutual funds, your sovereign funds that the country might have. So these are the type of institutional buyers that will probably buy these block trades. Obviously, because they are doing Warren a favor to buy his $1 billion of shares, what these institutional buyers would do, they would want a discounted price. Let's say this was trading at $10 per share. These institutional buyers would want this at $9.50 per share so that they would buy these shares of company X. Now, what happens here? There's two things. So number one is they start doing these gradual sales over time. Number one, so gradual sales of these shares. Number two, they go to institutional buyers after market hours to make those trades. By doing these, you suddenly minimize the market impact. So there is no impact on the market because you're only going to sell these, let's say 100,000 shares if you find a buyer. So the second they sell it, immediately there's someone to buy it that they've already found and discussed and negotiated with. And the second they sell, the institutional buyer is buying that much shares. So technically here, as soon as it goes down, it goes back up. So that is sort of cancelled. And they do this after market hours so that there's minimal market impact. So these are the two ways a billionaire would sell their billions of shares to minimize market impact. In our case, as I said before, it's just press of a button because number of shares for us was very, very minimal, which would have minimal impact on the market anyway, had it been a supply-demand thing. Whereas where billionaires, we're talking about billions of shares here, potentially, and billions of dollars. And that's why there's a use of investment bankers in place using block trades and at a gradual sales after market hours usually with institutional buyers. So hopefully this video has been insightful somehow, guys. If you found this video insightful and if you didn't know how billionaires sold their billions worth of shares, I hope now you know. If you like this video, please do subscribe so that you don't miss out on these type of videos in the future. And don't forget to go and watch my last video on why every dollar in your pocket is not necessarily doing what you want it to do. And I talk about why you need to treat every dollar as an employee and how to do that and why it's important to do that. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.
Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Ay, still not